The San Francisco 49ers might have just been handed the perfect blueprint to solve one of the biggest contract situations on their roster. And strangely enough, it came from the Houston Texans. Because something extremely unusual just happened in the NFL. The Texans gave edge rusher Danielle Hunter a contract extension worth over $40 million. But here's the twist. It's basically only a one-year extension with that massive amount of money fully guaranteed. That kind of structure almost never happens in the NFL. Normally, when a player gets that level of guaranteed money, it comes attached to multiple years of team control. But Houston flipped the script, and the moment this deal was reported, it immediately raised an interesting question for 49ers fans. Could this be the exact model San Francisco uses to solve the Trent Williams contract situation? Because right now the 49ers and Trent Williams are trying to thread a very delicate needle. Williams is still one of the best offensive tackles in football, even at this stage of his career. But at the same time, his contract structure is putting the team in a very complicated spot. Let me explain what's going on. As things currently stand, Trent Williams is scheduled to make roughly $33 million in compensation. But here's the catch, none of that money is fully guaranteed. At the same time, his cap hit is sitting around $39 million for the season. So the 49ers are looking at a situation where they have a massive cap number attached to one player, without the long-term security that usually comes with it. From the team's perspective, that cap hit is simply too high. But from Trent Williams' perspective, having zero guaranteed money at this point in his career probably doesn't feel great either. So both sides are motivated to find a solution. And that's where the Texans' contract structure with Danielle Hunter suddenly becomes really interesting. Before we dive deeper into that, though, I want to ask you something. Do you want the 49ers to keep Trent Williams for at least the next 2 seasons? Type YES if you want the future Hall of Famer protecting the blind side a little longer. Or type nitrogen monoxide if you think the team should start preparing for life after Trent right now. I'm genuinely curious where the faithful stand on this. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because we're covering every major 49ers move this offseason. The goal is to reach 2,000 subscribers with the best for Niners community on YouTube, and you being here is a huge part of that. Now here's where things start to get fascinating. Because the Texans didn't just give Danielle Hunter a lot of money. They used some serious salary cap gymnastics to make the numbers work in a way that benefits both the player and the team. And when you look closely at how they did it, you can start to see exactly how the 49ers might be able to pull off something very similar with Trent Williams. Listen closely, because this is where the math and the trickery actually happen, and it's the part that makes the Texans' Danielle Hunter deal feel less like a mystery and more like a repeatable play. Houston didn't invent magic. They used the tools that every NFL front office has, but they used them aggressively and in combination. The basic steps were, first, dramatically lower the player's base salary for the immediate season, often down to the veteran minimum. Second, give a very large signing bonus up front. Third, prorate that signing bonus over multiple years, including void years, so the cap hit this season is pushed into the future. And fourth, tack on another year of team control with guarantees the player wants. The result? The player walks away with a ton of guaranteed dollars. The team keeps this season's cap hit reasonable, and both sides get what they value most right now. In Danielle Hunter's case, the base salary was cut to almost nothing, a roughly $30 million signing bonus was prorated over 5 years, and an extra year with fully guaranteed money was added. On paper, you see a headline number that reads like elite money for an elite player, but when you look at this season's cap number, it's much lower. That's the point. Now map that to Trent Williams. He's in a different market. Offensive tackles don't pull the same headline per year averages as edge rushers, which means any numbers for Trent would be smaller than Hunter's, but the structural blueprint is exactly the same. Right now, Williams has a massive scheduled compensation for the season, a cap hit north of $35 million, and almost no fully guaranteed money protecting him. The 49ers could soothe both needs by doing essentially what Houston did: renegotiate so a chunky portion of the money converts to a large signing bonus. Prorate that bonus over multiple years including voids, slash the immediate base, option payout so this year's cap number drops, and then add guaranteed compensation in a subsequent year that gives Trent the security he wants. That gives the team breathing room to sign other pieces and keeps a Hall of Fame level tackle on the roster, while giving Trent the guarantees he deserves if he plays well. Yes, it creates dead money later if things go south, and yes, you still risk aging and performance decline, but dead money is a known quantity. Uncertainty about cap flexibility today is the more immediate problem for a roster chasing a Super Bowl. Quick audience check: if the 49ers offered Trent a similar structured deal, lower cap hit this year, significant guaranteed dollars spread across 2 seasons, and some void protection for the team, would you be for it? Type YES if you want the team to keep Trent and by near-term cap flexibility, or type nitrogen monoxide if you'd prefer the 49ers aggressively pivot to a younger left tackle and draft capital. I want to see where the faithful stand. Mid-roll, real quick, if you love in-depth 49ers breakdowns like this and want this community to grow, hit subscribe and help us reach 2,000 subscribers. If you're able, support the channel with super thanks or hype. It's not a donation, it's fuel for the quest for the next Super Bowl trophy, and it helps us upgrade production for the faithful. Thank you, every bit helps. At the heart of this entire situation is leverage. Every contract negotiation in the NFL comes down to leverage, timing, and risk tolerance from both sides, and when you look at the Trent Williams situation through that lens, it becomes a lot easier to understand why things might feel tense right now, but also why a solution is still very realistic. Because the truth is, both Trent Williams and the San Francisco 49ers need each other more than either side probably wants to admit publicly. Start with Trent's side of the table. Even at his age, he's still one of the best offensive tackles in football. In fact, many people around the league would still put him comfortably inside the top 5 at the position. When you watch the tape, the athleticism is still there. The footwork is still elite. The power is still elite. The leadership inside that locker room, that's something you can't even put a number on. When you have a quarterback like Brock Purdy and an offense built around timing, play action, and outside zone runs, the left tackle is one of the most important players on the entire roster. Trent Williams has been the anchor of that system since the moment he arrived in San Francisco, but Trent also understands the reality of the NFL business. He's entering a stage of his career where every contract could be the last one. Players at 38 years old don't typically have the luxury of long-term deals anymore. That means the priority shifts from long-term security to guaranteed money right now. And that's exactly why the current structure of his deal becomes an issue. Because as things stand, Trent is scheduled to earn over $30 million this season, yet none of that money is guaranteed. From a player's perspective, that's uncomfortable. If something unexpected happens, injury, performance decline, or even a roster shift, the team technically has flexibility that the player doesn't. Now flip the perspective and look at the 49ers side. The organization absolutely values Trent Williams. There's no debate there. Kyle Shanahan has repeatedly emphasized how important he is to the offense. But the front office also has to think about the bigger picture. This roster is expensive. There are star players at nearly every position: Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and others. The salary cap puzzle becomes more complicated every single year. And if the 49ers leave Trent's cap hit sitting near $40 million this season, it limits what they can do in free agency and beyond. So the negotiation becomes a balancing act. Trent wants security. The team wants cap flexibility. The good news: is that the NFL's salary cap rules allow both things to exist at the same time if the contract is structured creatively enough. That's why the Danielle Hunter example is so important. It shows how a team can hand a player a massive chunk of guaranteed money while still lowering the current cap hit dramatically. But there's another element here that makes the timeline interesting, and that's the option bonus trigger coming up soon. When a bonus like that sits on the calendar, it creates a natural deadline. Once the bonus activates, the financial structure of the contract changes, and the team may be forced to commit money before the negotiation is truly finished. Front offices hate operating under those circumstances. That's why most deals like this tend to get resolved before those bonus triggers hit. And here's where the leverage becomes more nuanced. Trent Williams has leverage because he's still elite and incredibly difficult to replace. There simply aren't many left tackles in the world who can step in and replicate what he does for this offense. But the 49ers also have a degree of leverage because they are thinking about the future. At some point, every team has to transition from a legendary veteran to the next generation at a position. The front office has to be thinking about that timeline already. That doesn't necessarily mean they want to move on right now. In fact, the simplest path forward, the one that makes the most football sense, is still finding a reworked deal that keeps Trent Williams protecting the left side for at least another year or two. But the fact that the team can explore potential replacements in free agency or the draft does create a little bit of pressure in negotiations. It's the classic NFL contract dance. Both sides know they're stronger together, but each side quietly explores alternatives to strengthen their position at the table. Let me ask you something, because this is where opinions inside the fan base can get really interesting. If you were running the 49ers front office right now, what would you do? Would you extend Trent Williams with a restructured 2-year deal and keep the Super Bowl window wide open? Or would you start preparing for the future and invest in a younger left tackle right now? Drop your answer in the comments because I want to see where the faithful land on this debate. And here's the reality that makes this situation fascinating. The 49ers have already navigated something similar before. When Trent first arrived in San Francisco, there were questions about longevity then too. Yet the partnership turned into one of the most successful moves of the Shanahan era that history matters. Trust between player and organization often determines whether negotiations become messy standoffs or smooth restructures, which leads perfectly into the final piece of this story. Because while the Trent Williams contract situation is the headline right now, the 49ers quietly made several other moves that reveals something about the direction of the team, especially when it comes to the coaching staff and the defensive brain trust inside the building. And when you trace the connections between those coaches, you start to see just how interconnected the NFL coaching world really is. While the Trent Williams contract situation is grabbing most of the headlines, the San Francisco 49ers quietly made a couple of coaching hires that actually tell us a lot about the direction of the organization. These moves might not seem massive at first glance, but when you zoom out and look at the connections behind them, you start to see the bigger philosophy shaping this team moving forward. The first hire involves the offensive line room. The 49ers are bringing in Angel Matute, who previously served as the offensive line coach at Kent State, to become the team's new assistant offensive line coach. The position opened up after Cameron Clemens moved over to tight ends coach, following Brian Fleury's departure to become the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. Matute might not be a household name for most NFL fans, but his track record at Kent State is notable. Under his leadership, the Golden Flashes significantly improved their offensive line performance. The team reduced its sack total from 43 sacks allowed in one season to just 27 the following year. At the same time, the run game saw a boost of roughly 20 additional rushing yards per game. Those kinds of improvements don't happen by accident. Offensive line play is all about technique, communication, and system consistency. When a unit improves that dramatically, it usually means the coaching has had a real impact. Now Matute will have the opportunity to work under longtime AFL offensive line coach Chris Forster, which should create an interesting blend of ideas between college and pro-level coaching. And that leads to a really intriguing question about what the 49ers might be. Thinking schematically, because when you look at the coaching hires this offseason, there's a noticeable pattern. The team is bringing in multiple assistants with college backgrounds to work behind experienced NFL coaches. That could suggest the organization is interested in integrating some newer offensive line concepts that have been evolving at the college level. College football often experiments with run-blocking schemes and protection adjustments long before they reach the NFL, so bringing in coaches with that perspective could help the 49ers stay ahead of defensive trends while still maintaining the core principles of Kyle Shanahan's system. But the more fascinating hire might actually be on the defensive side of the ball. The 49ers have added Matt Eberflus as their assistant head coach on defense. Yes, that same Matt Eberflus, who previously served as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. While his tenure as a head coach didn't ultimately work out in Chicago, his reputation as a defensive mind remains strong around the league. Eberflus built his reputation as a defensive coordinator with the Indianapolis Colts, where his units consistently ranked among the better defenses in the NFL in terms of discipline, effort, and takeaway production. He's known for coaching a fast, aggressive defense built around a four-man front and disciplined zone coverage principles. But what makes this hire particularly interesting isn't just Eberflus himself, it's the network of coaching connections that links him directly into the 49ers' existing brain trust. At the center of that network is one legendary defensive coach, Monty Kiffin. Kiffin is widely credited with pioneering the tamper to defense, a system that revolutionized how teams structured zone coverage and defensive line responsibilities. His influence spread across the NFL for decades, and many of today's defensive coaches trace their coaching lineage back to him in one way or another. When you look at the 49ers staff, the connections start stacking up quickly. John Lynch, the 49ers general manager, played safety for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers under Monty Kiffin. During those years, Lynch became one of the defining players in that defense. Raheem Morris, who now plays a major role on the 49ers defensive staff, began his coaching career as a defensive quality control coach under Kiffin in Tampa Bay. Even Kyle Shanahan has an indirect connection. Early in his career, Shanahan actually worked as a defensive quality control coach in Tampa Bay, learning the system that Kiffin built. Then there's Matt Eberflus. During his time with the Dallas Cowboys, Eberflus worked as the linebackers coach while Rod Marinelli was the defensive line coach. Marinelli had previously worked under Monty Kiffin as part of that same coaching tree. So when the 49ers add someone like Eberflus, they're not just hiring a random former head coach. They're bringing in someone who understands the philosophies that already exist within the organization, and the connections don't stop there. If you go even further back in coaching history, you'll find another familiar name connected to that same tree, Pete Carroll. Carroll, the longtime head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, built his famous defensive system in Seattle using many principles that evolved from the Tamper to Foundation. And Carroll's earliest coaching experience came when he worked as a graduate assistant at Arkansas's under, you guessed it, Monty Kiffin. That coaching lineage eventually influenced the Seattle-style defensive structure that the 49ers adopted when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch first took over the team in 2017. When Robert Saleh arrived as defensive coordinator, the defense was heavily influenced by that same four-man front philosophy that had evolved through Carroll, Dan Quinn, and Gus Bradley. So when the 49ers bring in Matt Eberflus today, they're essentially adding another branch of the same football family tree. And in the NFL, those relationships matter. Coaching staffs function best when everyone speaks the same football language. When coaches share similar terminology, philosophy, and teaching methods, it allows the entire system to operate more smoothly. That's likely the real reason behind the hire. Eberflus doesn't need to run the defense himself. Instead, he can provide experienced guidance, help develop younger coaches, and offer another experienced voice inside the defensive meeting rooms. Having a former head coach in a supporting role can be incredibly valuable for a staff that already includes several younger assistants. In many ways, it's similar to what the 49ers did last year when they brought in Gus Bradley in a comparable role. That veteran presence can help stabilize the defensive staff and give the team another perspective when preparing for opponents each week. And when you step back and look at the entire offseason picture, you start to see the pattern. The 49ers are adjusting contracts, they're restructuring cap space, they're preparing for free agency, they're adding experienced coaching minds while also bringing in younger assistants with new ideas. All of these moves point toward one clear goal: keeping the Super Bowl window open while preparing for the future at the same time. Because that's the challenge facing every contender in the NFL. You can't only think about the next season. You also can't focus so much on the future that you waste the championship caliber roster you already have. Right now, the 49ers are trying to walk that tightrope. The Trent Williams contract negotiation is part of that balancing act. The coaching hires are another part. And as free agency approaches, we're about to see the next stage of the plan unfold. If the front office can successfully restructure Trent's deal, maintain cap flexibility, and continue strengthening the roster, the 49ers could once again enter the season as one of the most complete teams in the NFL, and considering how close they've been in recent years, that might be all they need to finally get over the hump.